And that moves us to the action agenda. So action as necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session. Do I have a motion? Mr. Hogan.
Make a motion, we approve selected employment items shown in Exhibit A.
Do I have a second? Ms. Snipes, any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. Do I have any more motions out of executive session? Ms. Snipes.
I would like to make a motion that we approve to schedule the Effective Professional Learning Communities training for the district's content coordinators and specialists to take place on July 1st and 2nd, and that we approve the procurement office to proceed with solicitation for a fixed price bid for the school-based professional development services.
All right, do I have a second? Mr. Hogan, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. Any other motions out of executive session? I don't believe so. All right. That moves us to the action agenda. We're already on the action agenda. It moves us to number 17 on the action agenda, which is the second and final reading, approval of the fiscal year 2024-2025 general fund budget as seen in Exhibit F. Mr. Hogan.
Make the motion that the board approve second and final reading of FY 2024-2025 general fund budget in the amount of $240,100,236. The second final reading of the fund balance assignment to include $3,211,334 for employee retention incentives to be paid November 2024, and $1.5 million for the purchase of portable classrooms, and setting the operation millage rate at 266 mils and setting the debt service millage rate at 69.5 mils.
Do I have a second? Ms. Snipes. Any discussion? Ms. Huddle.
I move to divide the question into 4 separate questions since each is capable of standing on its own. One question for the 24-25 operating budget, one question for the reallocation of monies from the operating fund balance, one question for the operating millage rate, and one question for the debt service millage rate.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Ms. Barnhart seconds the motion. Ms. Huddle, do you want to?
It's actually not a division of the question is actually not debatable, so I guess I think it's self-explanatory.
Okay, I will call for the vote then. All in favor of Ms. Huddle's motion? All opposed? Ms. Snipes, did you vote?
For or against?
For or against? For Ms. Huddle's motion?
Yes.
Against the motion. All right, so I'm sorry, I can't see. This is totally my fault. I will take the blame on that. So Ms. Huddle's motion failed 4-3. So we're on to the original motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call.
I'm sorry, I have a motion.
Okay, Ms. Barnhart.
I move to amend the budget approval to reallocate $1,500,000 from the fund balance assignment for portables, $1.2 million from continuation of SR3 positions, $525,000 for continuation of SR3 programs and supplemental pay, and $165,000 from continuation of the community support position, a total of $3,390,000 to be applied to the teacher step schedule in a manner that best increases our teacher pay salaries and aligning them with increasingly competitive neighboring districts.
Do I have a second? Ms. Huddle seconds.
So, a few things. I heard it mentioned earlier by, I believe, Ms. Rawls, and then an email also from Dr. Ross about the one-time money. Now, generally, I do agree with that statement. You know, if you have the money, we're not going to move to, spend it again. But even in the budget, we are asking for the SR3 positions, which the SR money was originally a one-time money situation. And these are positions that now we're continuing, even though the ESSER money or the ESSER funds were there for essentially a temporary position. And it says in there on the budget that, I'm sorry, let me get to it, the temporary time-limited position subject to the board's approval annually. And so it just kind of seems like a back and forth of, well, one-time money can't kind of go to increasing teacher salaries, but it will go to increasing or continuing on these positions that were created kind of during the COVID time. That's 9 clinical counselors, 1 nurse, a nursing support assistant, a youth engagement counselor, a behavior program lead, a social worker. I've read a lot of studies, and especially kind of in the time since COVID, I'm not saying that we don't have mental health issues that need to be addressed, and I absolutely agree that we do need to have these positions in our schools, especially now after everything our kids have gone through. But, I mean, a good teacher is also a great ability for a child's mental health because they have these good, safe and stable classrooms. And so I'm just curious as to why we're going to spend, over $3 million for these positions that were, by definition, one-time money positions, and not kind of go towards giving that to our teachers.
Well, wasn't that, I mean, I do have to kind of strongly disagree with you, because part of the reason why we brought those positions in under COVID with that funding that we were, wasn't there before, is because we put so much on our teachers. The money doesn't help a teacher that is trying to help a student that is struggling for so many different reasons. They have an entire classroom of students that have their own individual needs, and it is hard for a teacher. Talk to teachers about that. If you even go to the Sarah report, they're not saying pay our teachers more and that will make them happier. They're saying it's not just about the money. It's about what's happening at home, what's happening in the classrooms with a class full of kids that are coming from all kinds of different environments, trying to be kids, trying to learn. It's hard. So, yeah, I mean, these are temporary positions that we're trying to keep because the ESSER funds are gone and they're not, we're not giving them FTE positions, and we're trying to figure out how we keep them around. But those supports are so instrumental in how every student gets through the day. Those, I mean, I can only speak for, personally from the kids, my kids, and for friends of mine at different schools that have utilized those supports. From the folks that are already FTEs, from our school counselors, to the additional people that we bring in because they have unique challenges. We don't have enough people helping our kids right now. I'm saying that as somebody that sits on this board, as someone who has kids, I'm saying that for my kids, and there are so many kids that don't have it as good as mine. I know that.
I mean, I agree.
I know that.
I'm the same way.
So,
I have 3 kids as
I
well.
mean, I just, when we're talking, our kids are struggling right now. And I don't think that, bringing in uniquely qualified individuals to help our students, that money, and taking that money and putting $500 extra to another teacher, in every other teacher, which is very important to every family, that is not taken away. These are hard decisions that we have to make as board members.
Understood.
So I just disagree with that.
And I think if we're gonna, I absolutely understand.
It's
I
not
have
like
3
we're not
kids in the
trying to pay
district as
teachers,
well.
and the narrative that we are not trying to pay teachers is so wrong.
I have 3 kids in the district as well, and I completely understand that there is a lot of absolutely our kids are struggling. We'll look at what they just went through. But I think, before we it's almost, I'm not saying that, like I said, I'm not saying that these positions aren't vital and that they're not necessary. But, we also should maybe address why we're in this position in the first place, why we do need these continued positions and these help for the kids. Because, we also need to talk about how we got here. Not just in our kids in this district, but across the country, why are kids struggling so much more with mental health issues? And I think it obviously goes back to COVID. There was a lot of things that happened, even though we were given information at the time and, we had to do these things for the safety of our children. A lot of things are coming out in the news right now that, none of them were necessarily accurate. Just last week, the big doctor, admitted that a lot of these things that we put onto our kids were kind of just made up. And so,
I don't disagree with you, but the fact that the fact that that our kids have needs, that doesn't change. The reasons why might be our fault, might be, I get it. But it doesn't, we still need them. I just respectfully disagree. I appreciate your opinion. I saw Miss Snipes.
I agree with Rebecca, but I also have the concern about the downplaying of the people who are filling the roles of our mental health staff. These people still have to go to work. They are still important and vital members of our district. And I just would like us to be careful to not paint the image that they are just disposable. Because just as much as we are advocating or would like our teachers to be happy and to be paid well, that's a universal concern of mine. As Dr. Ross mentioned earlier, as we talked about budgeting and the fact that our support staff and other people in the district that also need more money, and those people are vital to the ongoing of the schools as well. And I just think that that's important. But I also respectfully, disagree with pulling those roles, because to your point about why they got here, why kids may need more mental help may vary, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a present issue and it hasn't gone away. And I think to pull that support when we still have such a need for it, we would be doing ourselves a disservice. And I think we're not doing our teachers any justice either. Just my opinion.
All right, Mr. Satterfield.
Yeah, I want to add a couple of things to that, because I think it's a lot more convoluted than you realize. Having run a school before, there's a myriad of things that teachers go through. Pay it's an issue. There's no question. Let's all just bump them $10,000 a year. That would help. But teachers do need that extra support. They do have kids that have a lot of issues, and it's not just from COVID. It's from social media. It's from the back and forth with attacking each other on cell phones. We've also got all these political groups that are attacking teachers constantly. You think there's a shortage just because we're not paying them enough? You're not. We've got to take the blinders off. We're partially responsible. School boards are partially responsible for the teacher shortage. You can't, if you watch the news, you see these people attacking. They've been doing it for years. You go to even some of the other districts in our own state where teachers are afraid to stand up and even speak on their behalf. We're losing people at the district level. We're losing a lot of folks because we have these blinders on and we think we know what's best for these professionals who have been doing this for so many years. Our kids have issues. A lot, but it's not the only thing that teachers are wrestling with. It's a bigger picture, and I think to ignore that and just to say, well, here's an extra $500 or an extra $1,000, more teachers, more people are going to go into education. It's not going to happen. We've got to do a better job as school boards. We've got to do a better job as parents. We've got to do a better job meeting the needs. There are mental health issues. There are a lot of those mental health issues out there. But we've got to be able to see the whole picture, the whole child. That used to be the mantra of every educator, was the whole child. Well, we need to look at the whole teacher too. We can't say we support teachers, let's give them extra money, and then turn around and demonstrate outwardly that we don't support them unless you agree with us. We just got to do a better job as school boards.
Mr. Hogan.
Ms. Barnhart, outside of the 1.5 million in portables, and I couldn't get all of the numbers written down in your motion, can you tell me what the total amount was? $3,390,000. Outside of the 1.5?
Oh,
So 1.5 for portables and another 1.73?
yes.
Okay. I understand where you're coming from on the portables. And while that's, a fund balance transfer, and we've got a fund balance of $41 million, 17.27% of our budget, our proposed budget, I would be much more inclined if that portable fund balance was reallocated towards teacher pay. But the one straw I will not break on is removing mental health workers from our schools.
I have no problem in amending my motion for
That
simply
would-
just
that
the
would be a
portables. That's
5.6
1.5 million that could go to our teachers.
And I understand that, and understand this would be a 4.9 mil increase next year, because it's not a reoccurring expense. And to do that at 1.73, 95% collection rate, $304,061 per mil, that would be a 5.6 mil % increase, correct? Ms. Rawls?
If you use the 1.5, there's no millage increase.
Okay, so why would we need the other 1.33 allocated away from mental health workers.
Okay, well, I haven't spoken yet, but there's plenty of money in here. We routinely, you can go back and average the last 5 to 7 years, we always have over $2 million extra. We set the tax, we assume that the taxes are going to be less than they are, and we don't spend our budget. It's consistent. It's like clockwork. I mean, I hate to say it, but I told y'all last year we were going to do it, and we did. We ended up with extra money. This budget doesn't even include interest rates. It assumes that interest will just magically go back down to 3%. It's not going to happen. So the money is there. And if we're going to defer something, and because we might get more money from the government, why are we not deferring the ESSER positions? Those positions are funded through September 30th. We could increase our teachers' pay now to at least match our neighboring school districts, because it sends a message. It's not just about the $500. Every single person up here ran on taking care of our teachers. And you have a chance to do that. We have
We
the
are.
money.
We've
are
been
taking
giving
care of
them
our
raises.
teachers.
We
I
have
have the floor.
increased salaries, what, 6% every year. We are above the state minimum. We are having the conversations. We give bonuses every November. When we have excess money, we put it in the classrooms. But what this budget doesn't do is increase all of the other positions. It's just teachers. Paying teachers more is a political talking point that people use to get elected. And it is not what is keeping teachers in the classroom, Kathy.
Okay, I'm Miss Huddle in here, and I've talked to a lot of teachers, and you're right, Mr. Satterfield. It's a shame, because you know what? They'll call me, but they won't come here because they're afraid.
Well, I hear from
And they're
teachers.
afraid because they don't feel that it'll make a difference. They feel like they'll come here and they'll say something and it won't change anything. And that's just incredibly disappointing. Okay, the money is here, and matching our neighboring districts does matter. It sends a message that we value you just as much. The money's here.
Well, I hear from teachers that also talk about the support and everything that they need. So you may hear from teachers for one thing. I'm not devaluing that, but it doesn't take away from those of us who may hear from teachers that have other concerns. And I hate the narrative that is floating around about the fact that we aren't, take for example, after the last board meeting, that we don't want to give teachers a raise, when in actuality the concern was, but if we give them a raise and we don't have the money to sustain it, next year do we take it back? But that's not what's being reported out. That's not what, and it's divisive. Whether that's intentional or not, it's not really the point. I just wish we would stop floating to say that we're not supporting our teachers, because I don't think anybody up here is trying not
We're
to
not.
support them.
We have the money. Why aren't we doing it? We have the money. Why aren't we doing it?
Question, because that's directed to me.
Yes.
I like to start off, I like figures, so what district are we not competitive with?
We are lower in certain cells. If you, a member, I don't know if anybody else looked at it, but a member of the community did a very detailed comparison, cell by cell, of us to Lexington 2, Lexington 1, Richland 1, and Richland 2. And one of the Richlands hadn't published theirs yet. But they showed a detailed comparison, and I went through and I looked at every single cell and compared, and we were either third or fourth in almost 50% of the cells. And the masters was a real issue. We were third or fourth on every cell in masters at a time when 54% of South Carolina teachers have a master's degree, and most colleges are encouraging students to graduate with a master's degree. And that is concerning to me, and I do not understand why we don't address it when we have the money.
Can I ask the follow-up? Is that true? Are those districts higher than us on the majority of sales that they provided? Is that true?
It was like about 51% of the time, because there's hundreds of cells.
Yeah, I understand, but you said we're not
And about 51% of the
competitive.
cells, we were higher, and at about 49% of the cells, we were lower.
But is that true, is what I'm saying? Is that
I
the
don't
truth?
know, I did the math, I don't know. I
But
mean,
that's
you can
not-
do it too.
I'm being accused of not providing a competitive salary schedule. And I'm asking, is it true?
And that's the stuff I mean about how it looks in the community and the divisiveness, because you make these, and that's what I mean when I talk about the divisiveness, because you make these comments in the meeting, but we don't have all the facts and all the information to go along with it, and then people walk away thinking, oh, well, Kathy did all this research, and this is true because these people are doing this, and that's not
You
necessarily
got,
the
okay,
case.
you got the same thing I got, okay?
but you-
I
but
went and
that's not-
checked, did I check every single cell? No. I checked probably half of them against the budgets that those school districts had in their budget package, and the numbers that we were given all matched,
So-
okay?
So we did this work as well. And Ms. Rawls, you can correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Our goal was to provide as much of an increase to all 4 schedules. So we are not talking about the other 3, but as the administration, we will. So it was to give a raise to the admin, support staff, bus drivers, and teachers. I know that's not a part of the conversation, but we wanted to do that. We also wanted to do it without going into the fund balance and without increasing millage. I ask because it's true, because we have to work together here without the narratives. We are accused of not giving raises when we did 6% across the board. So we have to start there. So if the motion is to give a raise, what is that? Is it 8%? Is it 12%? What's the percent increase? Because we gave a raise to the teachers. Who we did not get is the support staff. These districts that you have named, when I look at Lexington 1, we're higher in the first cell. Lexington 2, Richland 1, and Richland 2 haven't approved their budgets yet. Richland 2, and I'm not here to talk about their processes, but all of those districts are either increasing fund balance or going into, increasing taxes or going into fund balance to do this. And that's their process, that's their boards, but we're not. We're doing this in a sustained way where we're not using a millage increase. We're giving as much as we can to those teachers. You can get $51,000 in our first cell. We would just like to grow sustainably. Find me another district that's going to compensate bachelors with no experience with $51,000. So I'm asking, is it true? Because we have to support our teachers in the support of this role. We are 80 years from the Operation Overlord, D-Day. Logisticians on that day were planning 2 years for that assault. What's interesting is we give a lot of credit, which we should, to those frontline soldiers, but was something that I came across in research. It took 18 support troops per yard for the invasion of Normandy. I bring that up because for every soldier that got every yard, it took 18 support troops to make sure that we could keep that sustained. While our teachers are on the front line of these classrooms, and it takes just as many support staff and mental health workers and counselors and clinical technicians and behavioral specialists and school clerks and bus drivers and food and clerical staff and financing staff to make sure that we can love and grow each and every one of these students. To see it ripped out like that, I don't know supports teachers. So I'm asking, is it true? Because that's the only way I can operate when that child meets that classroom with that teacher. We are the highest in compensating on that first sale. And we've done it without increasing the tax rate or going into fund balance to do it.
All right, anything else? Mr. Scully? I saw Mr. Scully, and then I'll go to Mr. Satterfield.
First of all, I disagree, and Dr. Ross, if you would confirm, I disagree with the notion that we have the money to do it. We don't have the money. We have needs in our district that are being paid for through the budget and the process. And using that money for other things takes away from other needed areas. Second, I disagree with the notion that we don't pay competitively. We absolutely do, in most cases more than. But any differences when you're looking at comparing a cell value versus at one district versus another, it's minimal. When you factor in taxes, gas, commuting time, all sorts of things in the scenario that a teacher goes to another district, we could offset that with giving each teacher a Chick-fil-A gift card when all that's factored in by the difference. Second of all, there's no evidence to support that we're going to have this loss of teachers due to, certain cell values in our compensation plan being less in some areas than others. I saw the same email, and I looked at the data and drew completely different conclusions, because what I saw was in years 6 through really 15, we were number 1 in most of the cells. And that's where we want to have, in my opinion, that's where the most experienced teachers are. That's where we're going to get the most value from having experienced teachers. We're not having any more of a shortage of new teachers coming in. We're not having a bigger problem hiring teachers out of college than other districts are. There's no evidence to support that our starting salaries are less, or even the first few years, if they're $1,000 different, is going to be prohibitive of us being able to hire teachers. So it's just not there. The narrative is wrong, and I am willing to actually pay teachers and put this narrative on its heels, because I'm willing to dip into, increase our millage, max out our millage to pay teachers. I'll happily make a motion and dare you to vote for it to increase our mills. I'm not doing it now. Enough to give every teacher in our district a $10,000 salary increase. We can do that if we max out our mills. I'll go there. So if you want to set that narrative and have that discussion, I'm happy to. But the narrative that's being put out there that we're not competitive is just flat out wrong.
Mr. Satterfield, I saw you were next. You're good? All right, anyone else? Okay, hold on. Mr. Hogan and then Ms. Huddle, and then we'll call for the vote on Ms. Barnhart's motion.
And Dr. Ross, this might go to Ms. Rawls, but with that 1.5 million that we're transferring from the fund balance for portables, I mean, obviously, there's a need for portables. We've got the future implications that they're going to be coming down the pipe. If that money was reallocated, 1.5 pulling from our 41.4 million in our fund balance would still put us in a position where we're okay. It would be in a position to where, to maintain that, obviously, we'd have to look at the collection rate and then potential increase of millage next year, if I'm reading it correctly.
That would be correct. And like we talked about earlier, in your policy, and it is permissive, but it says fund balance should not be used for recurring expenses. So I provide that information.
Ms. Huddle?
I have something I'd like to enter into the minutes, but I just want to close with, we do have the money. We don't need, it would be one thing, I would vote for a millage increase if that's what it took, because I believe it's extremely important that the best school district in the state at least match cell for cell every major competitor in our area. Because you're right, nobody's going to college to become a teacher to get well paid. But the teachers that are out there, our teachers deserve just as much as their counterparts at other school districts. And it's not just pay, it is also support. I also heard that from teachers, a lot of disciplinary support. There's a lot that they need. But we can do this with the budget we have. Again, we have consistently had over $2 million left every single year. And the sad part is, it doesn't go back to teachers. Most of the time, it ends up in buildings. And that wasn't what it was designed for. It was designed to educate our children. And our teachers, yes, our support staff are important. Everyone that makes it work are important. but it all starts with the teachers.
Thing to say, I'm sorry, just to clarify, for the 1.5 million, that is for 3 portables, so we're talking 3 portables, 9 clinical counselors, 1 youth engagement, well, 3 portables and then one's in the future, is what it stated on the thing. So 1 youth engagement counselor, a behavior program lead, a social worker, and mental health and counseling and all that. So, you know, at the end of this email, which I would like to put into the minutes, this item from Dr. Ross on May 31st, you know, you ended with, we need to ensure our district has a sustainable financial strategy to meet the educational needs of our district. But in my opinion, I understand the need for it, but therapists and counselors and social workers don't enhance the educational ability. Educators do.
All right, so I'm gonna call for the vote. We have Ms. This is for Ms., yes, there are 2 motions on the floor. The first motion that we are voting on is Ms. Barnhart's amendment. All in favor of Ms. Barnhart's motion? All opposed? I'm calling for the vote on the
I have
original.
another amendment.
Ms. Huddle has an amendment.
I move to amend the motion to defer voting on the debt service millage rate until we obtain legal advice from our chief legal counsel on the Attorney General's opinion issued on September 21st, 2022 to Chris Harmon regarding the legality of the board setting the debt service millage rate, the legality of using debt service fund balance for uses other than for repayment of existing bond debt indebtedness, and whether the board has the discretion to determine how the sinking fund can be reserved and/or applied.
Do I have a second? Ms. Barnhart, second.
So we've seen this before. You guys have had it in email form. I'm going to put it in the minutes, but we have a Attorney General's opinion, and I'm not going to bother to read the whole thing. It's really long. But the most important part is they wrote, as such, the auditor, and that's the county, calculates the millage, not us, the auditor, based on the bonds issued pursuant to the act and not on speculation as to bonds the school district may or may not decide to issue. So I think we should wait on that one portion of the motion until we get legal advice from our general counsel.
Any other discussion? See, Mr. Hogan.
Dr. Ross, can I ask Ms. Rawls how this would impact any potential hiccup in our budget process?
At this time, I mean, if we needed to defer the debt service millage approval, I think that would be fine. We have we probably could do that no later than the end of July. So if that would be one piece that's being held up, that would be okay.
Mr. Scully?
There's no reason to defer it. This is not anything out of the ordinary. There's no reason to do this. So it's not anything different than what we've done every year, so let's move forward.
Anyone else? All right, we're going to vote on Ms. Huddle's motion. All in favor of Ms. Huddle's motion? All opposed? That motion fails 4-3. Then that brings us to the original motion on the table of the budget. All in favor of the original motion on the table? All opposed? The budget carries 5-2.